Hello everybody, here we are today doing our season preview over the Tampa Bay Lightning, talking about whether or not the Bolts are going to get back to being dangerous this year. So, before we get started with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So last season, the Tampa Bay Lightning finished with 98 points and ended up going to the playoffs, only to see themselves lose to their in-state rivals, the Florida Panthers, and that was probably not great. Then there was more salt that was rubbed in the wound as the Panthers would go on to win their first Stanley Cup. This was another year where the Bolts were not able to make it out of the first round. And for Tampa Bay, losing a guy like Steven Stamkos, this was not probably an offseason where they were super excited about all the things that happened. People were probably wondering, is this where we are now, where we're no longer a Stanley Cup contender? Are we in a spot where we could maybe even miss the playoffs? These are all big storylines talking about for this team going into the season. So with all that kind of being brought up, what are some storylines to talk about for the Bolts? So the first storyline is talking about whether or not Jake Guentzel will be the missing piece to the puzzle. Looking at the acquisition of Jake Guentzel, this one was interesting as the Carolina Hurricanes had his rights, and then the Lightning basically said, hey, we'll trade for him, and then ended up signing him to a 7-year, $63 million deal, even though he never played a game for Tampa Bay, which is kind of funny, but that's kind of the way things work some ways. And I think that this one is a very interesting deal because of the fact that he is a guy that draws attention. I mean, he is a player that has got 4 seasons with 30 goals or more, 2 of those with 40 goals or more, and I think this also makes a statement to this team. Hey, even though we lost a guy like Stamkos, we are looking to be a team that is still competitive. We are a side that also signed Hedman to an extension, and this is all just kind of pointing towards them willing to still spend money, which is good. And I look at this and I understand that there's going to be a lot of people that look at this in just a couple of different ways, but I think in a way of looking at it that is positive. Guentzel is about 30 years old, an experienced player that has played on Stanley Cup contending teams, and is a guy that can probably help carry you on a playoff run. And that's kind of what it's all about here. Looking at him, I see a player that could be very impactful for the offensive game for this side, not only for this season, but for the long-term future. And I think that for Tampa Bay, that's kind of what the message is all about. We are still committed to trying to do something here and seeing what possibly sticks. Now, am I going to go out there and say Jake Guentzel is an absolute game changer, that he is the missing piece of the puzzle? No, he is still going to be a positive force for this team, but I still think that we are understanding that he's not suddenly going to make this team that is a 98-point side go and get 105 points or more. And who knows, maybe he could continue to get better, and maybe he is able to help them finish with a better result than what we saw. But he's not going to be somebody that is just a Connor McDavid level player, and I think we all understand that. Jake is somebody that the fans will probably enjoy. The fans will like to buy his jersey, but for now, we'll just have to see how it comes, because I think it'll probably be how people view him come playoff time. Even if the team loses early, but he is able to have a good playoff run, then they might say, well, it's not Jake's fault, it's other people's fault. And that's okay too, I guess. The second storyline is talking about whether or not Andrei Vasilevskiy will rebound. Andrei Vasilevskiy is a 2-time Stanley Cup champion, a guy that is a Conn Smythe winner, a Vezina winner, you name it. He's got a lot of things that have gone his way. He's got 4 seasons with 35 wins or more, which is just very impressive. A ton of 30-win seasons, a guy that you just know at this point in his career has established himself, not only for now, but generations to come will know his name. Even if they're like, oh yeah, he's the greatest goalie ever, they will say, yeah, I've heard of that guy. And I think one thing that was very weird last season for Tampa Bay that could have held them back was the fact that Andrei Vasilevskiy struggled. He barely posted a save percentage above 900 for the year. I think it was 901. And it was just a very tough season for him. And I think there's a couple of things where you could say maybe he's going to bounce back. He had to have like back surgery or something like that before the start of the year, had to recover after missing time, and then also had to jump in and try to help out the team. So looking at this, you could probably say another year to get better and get right and have that time away from the game officially without having to recover and then say, hey, you're going right back into the action. It's going to be good for Vasi as he's an experienced goalie that's already done the job twice for the Bolts. I think one of the things that could help him out is the fact that his team posted pretty good numbers at 5-on-5 and on the PK. So even if they aren't, a top 3 team defensively, they're still going to be able to probably help him out and be an above average team in that category, which is good for a goalie. But I do think one thing that we have to look at here that would probably say you're a little bit worried is the fact that after the All-Star break, he still didn't post great numbers. He ended up going 14, 10, and 2 and had a save percentage that was right around 900. I think it was 901 for that run. Still, again, not really a big improvement, even though they had that break a little bit. And if you're looking at that, that's about a 95-point pace that they're playing at when he's going in games that he gets the decision. And that's where you start to worry a little bit because of the fact that this is a goalie that's got a lot of miles on him. dealing with a pretty serious injury from last year, had a bad year, and also the fact too that Tampa Bay continues to struggle to find somebody that could reliably fill in for him in his absence. So that's why I think there are some reasons to be very, very worried about how this year will go. But on the flip side too, this is still somebody that has had a very good career. He's not very old or anything like that. I think he's turning 30 this year, or just about 30 years old, and is a player that had one bad year. This is a guy that a lot of players in the league still view as a very dangerous goalie. So I'm not going to give up on him after one bad year. I'm not going to say it's over, that his career is done and dusted, and that the better days are already behind him. But I do think that if he struggles again this year, that's very concerning for Tampa Bay in the short term and the long term, as he's on a long-term deal. But I also think that it is problematic for himself and seeing what he could be as a future goalie in the league. But we've still got an 82-game season in front of us where he's going to play a lot of those games, probably 50 or more. Let's see if he returns to that Vasi we all know, and is a guy that's a threat in between the pipes come playoff time. So the third and final storyline is talking about whether or not the team's power play percentage will suffer. Last season, the Tampa Bay Lightning had the best power play percentage in the entire league. They were first in the league in goals for per 60. In the season prior to that, they were second in the league for goals for per 60. Before that, they've been a regularly top 10 team in terms of scoring on the man advantage. They've been dangerous. We've all known that. But I think that this season especially, they could see a regression. First of all, to finish first back-to-back years in one category, especially something like the power play, would be hard to imagine. But if they're able to do that, that's good. But imagine that there's going to be some regression. Looking at the fact, too, Steven Stamkos is no longer with the team. I think he had 19 power play goals last year, somewhere around there, and is a guy that's consistently been able to lead the team in this category or be around the top. And with the fact that he's now in Nashville, probably thinking about having a good year for them on the man advantage, you realize the guy that is a sniper for you could very well, again, make this team suffer from his absence. And looking at a guy like Jake Guentzel, he didn't have a lot of power play goals last year. I think he had 5. Maybe he could slide in and things will be better for him and he could be more of a goal scorer, but I don't think they should necessarily expect him to fill in the goal scoring for Stamkos, a guy that we know is so dangerous on the man advantage. And I think it's just going to be weird in terms of the chemistry in the line. You know, when you're looking at the power play especially, could be timing, could be how things are set up, could be how a guy himself plays, and knowing the line mate that is going to be passing you the puck, hey, he's going to be situated here, and I feel more comfortable taking my shots here. So with Jake Guentzel being a goal scorer, maybe you don't have to worry as much, but I do think with Stamkos being gone, it's going to be more of a cohesion issue, as well as the fact, too, that we would expect some regression, just because being at nearly 30% for your power play percentage is very, very high. Now, I will say guys like Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov will probably do A-OK and keep this power play more than afloat. But at the same time, too, for a team that has been, 98-point side over the past 2 years, a team that looks like they could be possibly in a wild card spot if things don't shake out top 3 in the division, you'd probably be saying you would hate to see a regression on the power play, especially if Vasilevsky's struggling again, because those fringe teams that need things to go right, especially in a year that's looking pretty deep, you'd hate to miss out because of something like this. So just watch the power play, especially early on, see if things look a little bit wonky. So overall, what are my thoughts on the Tampa Bay Lightning? Well, this is a team that's been committed to signing or extending older players, getting older players, and trying to focus on win now mode. And that makes sense as a team that is a little bit short on those high-end picks for the future they'd like to see in terms of getting that high young-end talent. But I think for Tampa Bay, this is going to be a very big year to answer what they are in the next year or two after this as a franchise, as an older team that has been bounced in the first round of the playoffs in back-to-back years. Should they do it again this year or even fail to make the playoffs, this would be a big reason to be concerned. I don't think they've missed the playoffs since 2017. This hasn't really been a norm for quite some time now. And they've been a side that looks dangerous most years to possibly advance in the playoffs. But again, this year they could possibly get knocked out in the first round. And people say they're not really a threat anymore. So this would be a huge blow to this team. And I do think there'd be a lot more doubt cast on the future of this side. But I do think that Andrei Vasilevsky is undoubtedly going to be the X factor here. If he has a good year, like a really, really good year, Tampa Bay's back to being dangerous because a hot goalie can get you through the playoffs, and the Bolts have enough high-end players that should be able to get them there. Guys like Kim Atkinson as well, too, are one of those possibly low-risk, high-reward type players, but I'm still not going to be putting too many aspirations or expectations on them. Like I said in a video about this team a few months ago, they are a side that shouldn't be boring, but I don't think they're going to be particularly great. So at the moment, I'm not going to be buying a whole lot of the Tampa Bay stock for now. But what are your thoughts on the Tampa Bay Lightning? Do you think that they make the playoffs? Do you think they get out of the first round? Or do you think that this will kind of be the start of a new era, even though it probably won't be, again, because these contracts are handed out? They spent the money, they're probably going to ride things out for a bit. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. Eagle love hockey, alright. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.